3 more cats in your house. Jesus Christ. It's just terrifying in so many ways.
But you're so sweet.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Don't you want a whole batch of them? No. That's what I want to get to. So anyway, all right, that fixes a few things. I don't think there's any way in hell I'm going to get this book done by August or end of August. There's no way.
2 weeks from now, how many words do you think you have left?
Oh my God, probably 60, 70.
I believe that the end of the month is an unrealistic goal.
Plus, since I still have to put together the presentation for the 26th, plus I'm recording the audiobook, trying to get it done now that we have cover art coming. The edits should be here any day. That means my timetable keeps getting pushed after
I
nothing
think you need.
happening for
I think
months.
you need to slip this back to the second half of September, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is I've been wanting to write the last couple days, but my it's so hard to explain. It's like you have a voice inside you screaming at you to do shit, and the majority of your brain is like, "Fuck you." And it's not it's not laziness. It's so hard to describe chronic depression when it hits. It's so goddamn difficult because the voices keep telling you, get off your ass, and you have no energy. And when you sit down and try and focus, nothing happens. It's just like
While I
it's a
while I don't
mess.
have depression, I do understand the lack of enthusiasm to do something. You know
Do
you need
anything.
to. You just can't come up with the energy or the willpower to make it happen. I do understand the concept.
Yeah, it's just I'm cycling really fast right now. Friday was the first day last week I felt like doing anything. And yesterday I got all my podcast shit done. And I started editing DRS and I did a few other things, odds and ends. And what I really wanted to do was sit down and outline the rest of Station 3 to see if I could break through this plot impasse. And then my brain was like, "Do we really want to go there right now? That way lies madness. Why don't you just sit down and go read the first 10,000 words and figure out where you want to go from there and keep what you have because it's not wrong. It's not bad. It just needs to be pushed out a little further. So we
Mhm.
need to plot this a little more carefully."
I go through something very similar to that every time I switch projects. If I'm writing on one thing and I switch to something else, it takes me 3 or 4 days for my body, my brain to want to do anything with it. I'll want to write it, but I'm like, I just don't feel it. I just don't feel it. I'm not feeling anything inside about it. And it takes me a little bit of time to pull myself over into that new story and go, okay, I'm producing something. Something's happening. My brain is doing something.
It was funny because if I go back to QPD, for instance, that story is alive. Every time I go back there, all I have to do is read the last chapter and go, "Oh yeah, here's where I am. How am I going to describe this scene? Okay, now I've got it in my head." I stopped originally on that chapter because I couldn't figure out what the nursery looked like. But now I have the nursery kind of fit in my head and the kinds of things that went on in there before G got kicked out of his post and way things are now in the nursery so that we can have that whole discussion. This is kind of a big thing. And I also figured out one of the characters who's kind of an asshole. G hates him. Oh God, G hates him. And this guy doesn't really love G either, but they have to work together. Why this guy has such a chip on his shoulder. I figured that out. And it's really nasty, logical, and human. It's basically like sentient entities should not exist. And
That's a pretty poor excuse of a brain to have right then.
And his reasoning is because they will never be anything but slaves.
I don't think that he really understands sentience.
We're talking about artificial sentient entities, manufactured. And that's part of the problem. He doesn't
Mm.
consider it natural evolution. He considers it slavery because they're being um manufactured to do what they do. And he thinks it's wrong. From an ethical standpoint, he thinks it's wrong. He's not out to kill them. He doesn't think they all need to be terminated. He wants the process to be stopped because he thinks it was a mistake. And that's why he's in the position he is. And
He
that's why
might very well be right.
Uh, that's why I love this shit. That's why I love playing in that ethics gray zone. You know, the kind of issues that
I
we're
am
going to be
unsure
dealing
that
with.
this is a gray zone, my friend. I'm pretty sure that there's a bright line that one should not be creating artificial sentience with the intention of forcing it to do something. I'm
Yes,
pretty sure that's wrong.
but you have to consider them sentience first and not
somebody,
savages. If you want to go back to
somebody, well, no,
colonialism.
even not. I'm not talking about savagery or their level of
No, 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 no,
advancement.
no. I'm talking about the way they are treated. And if you go back and look at colonialism, it's very much the same thing.
One of the books, oh God, I can't even remember who wrote this. He calls his artificial intelligences that they use in this book, he calls them artificial stupids. And the reason is because they were created with the limitation that they would not have true sentience.
Right.
They are basically programs that are very sophisticated, made to do specific tasks, like drive a taxi, for example. An artificial stupid would drive the taxi around, would know the entire layout of the city, would know how to interpret traffic patterns, would be able to welcome you into the taxi,
Yeah.
answer any basic
Interact. Yeah.
questions, get you to your destination, and collect the fee. But it has no sentience or curiosity beyond its task. It's not really intelligent.
I think you would love Ghost in the Shell. I really
I
do
probably
think you would
would.
love
It's
that.
it's one of those that I may have seen a little bit. There was a movie by that name, wasn't there? I'm sure
Yeah,
there
I didn't
was.
see it. It looked like, well, actually, they were gonna make. Yeah, I guess they did make it. I haven't seen the live action film, and I won't because it doesn't
Was
have any
this
Japanese in it.
did it have Scarlett Johansson or
Yeah, it had
somebody in it?
Scarlett Johansson or somebody like that in it.
I did see that movie,
Okay, well,
and
fuck the movie.
I thought it was passable. I know a lot of people gave it hate, but I didn't know the source material, so I was
Yeah,
like, "Eh, it
yeah,
was okay
exactly.
for what it
Video.
was."
I've read the manga. I've read and I have both seasons of the standalone complex, and I've seen the animated movie for Ghost in the Shell. So I have a pretty good overview of the universe. But they have that very thing in there, which is some of the AIs are sentient, and most of them are what you called artificial stupid. They're purpose built, like purpose built Android for doing cyber tasks, but you still want them to be not a disembodied thing because you want them to be able to do other things.
You want them to be a sophisticated tool,
Right.
not to be a being.
Right. And they become multi-purpose, but they stand in for like in Ghost in the Shell, they use them for they can use them as sex dolls, obviously, but they also use them for servants to a certain degree. You know, this is my secretary or whatever that is not really sentient. It is a essentially artificial stupid.
There was a show on for a couple of seasons that I know I've mentioned to you called Humans,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it is very much along that line with lifelike androids that fulfill basic tasks, but they're not sentient until suddenly one
Until they
is,
are.
until they are.
Until
Some
they
of them
are.
are.
Yeah, becoming human or become human Chicago that the game that was out a couple of years ago basically dealt with that. It dealt with the ethics much more than Ghost in the Shell does. Ghost in the Shell doesn't really touch any of that. They stay the hell away from
It's
it.
it it's probably wise for something like that with anime and manga to stay away from the ethical issues.
Whereas Paul Cooley's going to dive right into them. Well, I mean, Gibson talked about it a bit in Neuromancer about the fact that certain AIs, like the ones that ran healthcare systems and Wall Street and everything else, had virtual shotguns to their heads to keep them in line. And I thought that I can't. I'm pretty sure I've got that almost right from that paragraph. It's a summation of that paragraph. It still sticks in my brain um, because they didn't want them able or even to think about doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And rather than trying to keep them from doing it, they basically said, if you do it, you die. And so the artificial entities are like, okay. So that's to me, that's slavery. I mean, it really is. You do
If
this
you
or
have
we
to
kill
hold a
you.
gun to something's head to make it do what you want, then that is slavery.
Yeah. And that's why I think Neuromancer is really about the breakout of another emergence of sentient entities.
You
It's a great
know,
book.
I'm going to
Great
see a
book.
movie tonight that covers what you're talking about from a completely different angle. Are you familiar with the movie Free Guy?
Yes. Yes, I have seen the many previews. I have read about what it is, and basically, it's lit RPG gone completely bonkers.
Oh no, it is not lit RPG at all because the
Well,
main
okay, it's
character
game lit
is a
gone bonkers.
is a
Sorry.
is a computer product
Yes,
that is shown the bigger world that he exists in.
it
That's
becomes
not lit RPG.
becomes
That's something different.
self aware that this universe doesn't make any goddamn sense at
Mhm.
all.
So that's kind of like turning the entire situation of ethics and morality on its head. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. We're going to the movies at 7 tonight to watch it, and it's going to be fun.
I saw something about Gosling's already chirping about a sequel.
Oh, I've heard that the movie's a real hoot, so I hope so.
He's
It looks
already
like a real hoot.
it looks ridiculous. It looks absolutely ridiculous. And that's not a problem. It looks like it's a fun movie. I think my wife would probably enjoy that one too. So we'll
I'll
probably
definitely let you know what I think about it. The only other
yeah, I
movie
want a
that I went
review on that.
ooh, lightning outside my window.
Oh,
The only
dude,
other
yeah,
one
it
that
got dark here.
recently went and saw was God, what did I go see? What movie did I just go see that I wasn't so happy with? I'll have to think about it. But I went and watched a movie that I didn't particularly care for, and everybody, oh, I went and saw the new Suicide Squad.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a terrible movie. I thought it was a 2 star out of 5. 90% of the people think that I'm wrong, and I can live with that. I liked the first Suicide Squad movie because it was dark, gritty, and not cartoony.
And this one they went a little more lampoonish.
This one was a little bit more lampoony, and I didn't particularly care for it.
That was also because they were dealing with like minor characters from Suicide Squad, right? They had mixed in some characters who just had ridiculously stupid powers, like
Yeah,
throwing arms at people, and shit
yeah.
like that.
Except that it wasn't even throwing arms; it was just floating arms. And they're like,
Oh,
everybody's watching the arms move, and they're like moving at like walking speed. And they're like, really?
how
This
is
is your
that a
power?
power?
Really?
Well, you've seen Doctor Evil, right, or whatever it's called. Not Doctor Evil,
I didn't know what we're talking about. It. Yeah, I've seen it.
Doctor So and So sing along. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, I know that
Um,
one too, and I've seen some of those. Yes.
yeah, Moist. The character Moist. That's his power is he can make things moist. That's it. And he's always sweating, and his clothes are always damp. And he shakes people, and they're like, ah.
Somebody, I recently posted a picture of a sign somewhere that was written in, I don't know if it was Japanese or Chinese, but it was written in a different language and had the English translation underneath it. And the translation was, "Do not shit in the air like a god," was the translation. And I immediately thought, you know, this is like from it's like the spleen from from the superhero movie that came out a
The
couple of decades ago.
spleen.
That was his superpower. He could fart and knock people out with it. It was played by Pee
Oh,
Wee Herman,
oh, okay, all right.
and
I,
it was
I
just
believe it. I haven't
ridiculous.
seen it.
I'll have to think about try to find the name of it. If you get a chance to see it, the movie is actually really entertaining.
So, if any of this sounds really interesting to you folks, you should check out Mer Lafferty's Playing for Keeps because she
Mystery
does the
Men. The name
Mystery
was
Man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the movie
Mystery
was
Man.
Mystery Men.
Yeah, Mystery Man. If you like that kind of stuff and you have not read it, read Mer Lafferty's Playing for Keeps. It is excellent. And it is
Mhm.
about that kind of crazy shit with superheroes, everything else. In some ways, I think it's a precursor to the boys.
Oh
But
God, yeah,
I don't
maybe.
think that's right because I think The Boys as a graphic novel was way before that. But regardless, it's kind of sort of along those lines as far as how fucked up everything is with the main superheroes. It's a
One of
disaster
the
area.
One of the things that I remember from Mystery Men that I thought was a real hoot was when all of these iconoclastic second tier superheroes are getting some training to try to up their game from some guy that's got some skills with that, and they're just doing all kinds of weird things. He's having him do all kinds of weird things, and one of the people's like, "Why am I wearing watermelons on my feet?" And the guy's like, "I haven't got the slightest
It's
idea
like,
why
yeah,
you're
like,
wearing watermelons
you have
on your
water
feet.
outside your
I
feet.
didn't tell you to."
Was it Wes Studi? I think it was Wes Studi that played the mentor. I think it was
He did a
Wes
great
Studi.
job.
Oh
He did a
yeah,
great job.
that's a pretty good movie. I don't really care for what's his name, the main actor that was in there, the comedic actor.
Oh
His name I
God,
can't
which
remember.
one? The main bad guy or the main
No,
good?
the main good
Which character?
guy, the Mr. Anger, or whatever his name is.
Oh God, he wasn't the. I don't know that I would call him the main character. Maybe he was. He was Mr.
Eh,
Furious was his
yeah,
name.
Mr. Furious. He was the main star in that movie, though,
Okay, I'll
from
buy
the
that. I personally liked the Disco Boys and the bad guys better. They were
and the
just out of
dude
control.
who threw silverware and the woman with the bowling ball. It's so ridiculous. Such a
And the shoveler.
ridiculous
We
movie.
can't forget the
Oh, you
shoveler.
can't forget the shoveler. Yeah, you can't forget the shoveler.
God, it's been like 15 years since I've seen this movie, and I still remember so many pieces of it. Obviously, it had a very positive feeling for me.
Yeah, I watched it, was like, "That was fun, but so goddamn ridiculous. Please don't make a sequel. Please don't make a sequel."
But yeah, as soon as I saw the "Don't shit in the air like a god," I thought of the spleen immediately.
That makes sense. That's another great place to play. I just don't. I love the fact that you have the comic book folk who make fun of the comic book heroes all the time and create some really cool stuff. I mean, Watchmen was a dissertation on the problems with the superhero mythos. A big dissertation on that.
My wife watched The Watchmen, and I didn't. I only saw little bits and pieces of it, but she had good things to say about it.
I haven't seen the series, but the movie is pretty faithful to the graphic novel. Pretty faithful. It did a pretty good job. I mean, to be honest, you couldn't be completely faithful to a graphic novel. It would not work on film. Um, so I agree with the changes they made because it cuts off a lot of time and it solves one little tiny plot problem that I think existed in the original source material. So I thought it was a very well done movie. I love that movie. I own it. But those kinds of social commentary on an entire genre, and then you have a badass story to go along with it, is just a hell of a thing to pull off. Hell
I've
of a
only
thing.
seen the first season and half of the second season of The Boys. I just got sidetracked from where I was watching, and I need to remember to go back and watch it. It's not on my usual watching locations, so I have to remember that I need to go to Amazon Prime to watch it.
Right.
But the second season was really interesting in that the bad guys had somebody else disrupting their bad guyiness because they were worse than them. And that was fun to watch somebody get totally discombobulated because they think they're all that and a bag of chips, and having somebody that's outright crazy fuck them over hard.
Yeah, it was like Clyde Barker's Damnation Game. I gave kind of a book report on it one day when we had a substitute teacher in. I summed up the book by saying, no matter how bad you think you are, there's always somebody so much worse, so much worse. That's kind of how I put it. That's a great book, by the way. Great book. One of the early Clive Barker books, relatively early anyway. Good book. Check it out. I just love those kinds of stories, and I've always wanted to write something like that that is that good. And then I go back and I think, okay, well, I wrote the street. I've already done that. I just keep forgetting I did it, but I want to do it again. And I guess I'm kind of doing that with G and quantum personality disorder. I mean, it's basically taking on that whole technology part and tearing it apart. You know, which is more important, humanity's survival or ethics? And where those two things collide. What are we willing to do to survive? What are we willing to do to be comfortable? What are we willing to do to have life be convenient? What things are we willing to cross over after certain disasters? Will certain norms, mores, and taboos get completely out of whack? Will something that is unacceptable today be completely acceptable tomorrow because of the shit they've been through as a society, as a a race of beings? Um, I really want to tear into something like that, and it seems like QPD is the starting point in the whole G thing. And Derelict Saga just ramped all of that up in my brain. So it's like now I want to go back and see how all this happened, and then I have the opportunity to go investigate and talk about these issues and maybe show shit that goes completely sideways and wrong. Not because of the sentient entities, but because of how the sentient entities are raised, and not just raised, what they're raised for, and then the treatment that goes along with that. How long before uh, the hate and loathing builds up to where they're going to do something? A
It's
trapped animal is always going to be trying to find a way out.
yeah.
Always, always.
One of the stories that I've talked about in the past that I keep threatening to write something along it is a world where the bad guys have won. They've extinguished the good guys.
See
And then,
Wanted for that one.
and then much worse people show up, and their even more evilness pushes the bad guys into having to take over some of the roles and actions that
Of the
the good
good
guys would
guys.
normally do, maybe for their own twisted reasons, but to slowly watch somebody's worldview shift and change as they're forced to do things that are outside their nature
Yeah.
and realize that they're not the same people that they were.
It's the same kind of thing as the American mafia. I don't know about the Italian mafia. I have no idea. But typically they dealt with criminals, they preyed on criminals. They didn't prey on the average person. They preyed on people that came to them with a problem. They got them into the sharks or whatever else, in the gambling, whatnot. But they didn't go out there and look for people to kill. They didn't go just rob people blind in the street who weren't involved in the biz.
Ah, the good old days.
Now, hang on. And they also considered families out of bounds. And then the Colombians came in and other ethnic groups who didn't have the same philosophy at all. They had the philosophy that you're my enemy, therefore your family's my enemy, therefore anybody you know is my enemy, and I'll kill them all. And that's a very different role, right? So suddenly, maybe you have, in your case, you have your mafia is doing business and being all cruel and everything else to the other people who are in the business, but life kind of goes on for normal people for the most part, and they don't really know what's going on. And then this new batch of crazies gets in there, and they have a completely different mindset, which is everybody's game.
You remember the television miniseries V,
Yeah, the original. Never saw
the
the
original?
other one.
I saw the remake too, but I don't remember enough about it to remember other than I didn't particularly care for it. In the original series, the aliens have basically taken over. And suddenly you've got people that don't normally work together working together. You've got the arms dealer working with the regular good guys. He's not a good guy.
Right.
And seeing him and that particular thing made me think of an alien invasion where you've got organized crime working with the remnants of the FBI
And
behind
the
the scenes
resistance.
and the resistance, and both of them, giving each other side eye because they're nominal opponents, and
This is
having
the
to
enemy of my enemy is my friend, right?
having to watch the two try to work together when they don't particularly care for one another and they're used to hunting one another. It's would be kind of a fun thing to do.
And there might be the occasional setup, also known as the
What happened to
sacrificial
the
idiot.
FBI agents? They fell down the elevator shaft. I can't tell you what happened.
How come none of the guns worked? I don't know. Did you guys check your ammo?
Did you make sure there was firing pins? That's really important for
That's
those
kind of
gun things,
important.
right?
Did you clean your weapons before you got out there? It's not my fault they were filled with mud.
It reminds me of a book that I just read that had it was a post-apocalyptic book, but it had some military people in there, and one of them worked her way into basically the bad guy's employ. And when the climactic moment came for the confrontation, the bad guy's got the pistol from the desk drawer and pulls the trigger and it just goes click. And so they're like cycling it, put more ammo in there, click.
Click, click.
And the person is like, "Did you know that super glue can stop anything like a firing
Big
pin?"
pen. Oh my God, that's mean. Oh, that's mean.
And I'm like, "That's clever.
That's
That's
cold.
real clever."
Oh, that's cold. Or super gluing the magazine into the pistol or rifle so that they can't pull it back out
They didn't
once they're
want
empty.
the person to know that the weapon was sabotaged. So disassembling it and putting super glue in where the firing pin was until you try to shoot it, you'll never know.
Even if you physically inspect it,
Even
if
if
it's
you
done right.
physically inspect it, if you do it right, there's no sign.
Hmm. Wow. Ways to have fun with Terry at the shooting range. Got it.
Let's not have that kind of fun. I suspect that you could, depending on the weapon, if it was a rifle, you could definitely get a better chance of seeing something going on with the firing pin. But
Yeah.
you would have to do if say for example you were taking apart a Glock, you would have to disassemble it much more than you would normally do so to be able to tell that the striker had been messed with.
Yeah. Even with my P7, it breaks down into I think 4 pieces. It only breaks down into four components. Gotta love H&K. Um, and the firing pin, you just basically stick a key in there and pull it out. The firing pin is nothing more than a tiny metal cylinder. That's it, and you can
To
see it.
to get the striker out of the Glock, you've got to take a little piece in the back and slide it off, and then the spring comes out, and it's got the striker attached to the spring.
Gotcha.
And so you would have to literally take that slider off, which is not part of the normal cleaning regimen, to get at it.
Right. It would be something that you'd have to know how to do it, obviously. But if you're working with those weapons every day, I would assume you would be going, there's a way to really mess with this.
Yeah, if you're familiar with guns, you can find a way to sabotage them or
Yeah.
anything
Or
else that you're
anything else.
familiar
Yeah.
with. Yeah,
Anything else like pumps.
yeah.
See
Not that
earlier
we're
in the
not that we're
conversation.
speaking of pumps in specific or anything.
The patrons heard that conversation, maybe, but the rest of you didn't. Um, God, there's so much crazy media coming out right now. Here's my question, Terry. What do you think is going to happen with Disney?
They are a multi-billion-dollar entity. I'd say almost a multi-trillion-dollar entity because they're just so huge. They're going to survive whatever happens. And right now, they've got so much money and influence that they think they can get away with anything
Yes, my question is what happens when the content creators stop working for them?
because people want to keep getting paid. They're
Yeah.
not going to.
Well,
They're still going to find people willing to do the work.
they will,
They're
but
going to find people.
the quality is going to go to shit. Um,
Maybe.
I think more and more from what I've been looking at with the Indiegogo and the Kickstarters and everything else is going on, and then some of these actors trying to put together money to make their own movies. Um, it's possible that it could ultimately break free from that. Plus, we have all the pressure of 99 streaming services, and you have to pay for each of them individually.
I need a super streamer.
It's like, wasn't that cable?
But then you have to pay for the knitting stream.
But then you have to pay for the knitting stream, right? Um, it's just such a disaster area right now. I don't really know where it's quite going to go. I'm hopeful that by the time I'm ready to get placed into the crematorium, that the artists have more control over their work and their visions without having to raise that much money. And maybe the computer generated stuff is really gonna eventually make that possible. I don't know, but I'd like to think that with Disney getting blowback, if they get enough blowback and enough of those people say, "Well, fuck you, I'm not going to go play, Black Widow again." Okay, well now you've got a hole in the MCU. You got to find a new actor to play that role. And how many people are going to come back to see that actor in that role? Does it kill something else in the MCU that they have planned? I mean, all this stuff ripples. And
Mhm.
so it makes me wonder just how long before we see one of those chinks hit hard in that wall of money,
I'm pretty sure that global warming will have killed humanity before that happens.
if only. So what needs to happen is, okay, the planet's going to like keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and then the asteroid Bennu is going to solve all of those problems, okay, coming down, whacking into the Earth, sending up a humongous cloud of dust that hangs out in the atmosphere and blocks the sun for a couple hundred years.
Now they've already said that that's only going to be a couple of decades, but that'll be more than enough to screw us over.
Yeah, it's a 1 in 1,750 chance is what I read today of that thing hitting. Um, And it's not exactly like I'm worried about it, but I just think that if things got too crazy, the universe will fix it. We may not like the
You
fix or even be around for it, but it will
you
get
should talk
fixed.
to a Las Vegas odds maker.
Maker, yeah, 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 yeah.
Because no matter how low the odds are, if you keep taking low order bets, eventually you're going to lose it because sometimes the odds do not work in your favor.
Yeah, and actually, 1 in 1,750 chance is not that bad of a probability. That's better odds than a lot of Vegas games, I think.
That's much higher odds than have been struck by lightning. And people are struck by lightning
Yeah,
all the time.
all the time, yeah. So it's one of those deals where I just sit there and think, well, is there another correction coming that we just don't really see? Are we the dinosaurs right
It's
now?
not going to be, you know what's not going to get us? It's not going to be an asteroid. It's going to be a coronal mass ejection.
That would be fun too. That would be fun. Well, we've got eight
That would be
minutes.
horrible. It's not going to hurt anybody on the planet, but it's going to wreck the power grid.
Yes. Yes.
And then they don't have all the big transformers they need to make it better. And civilization goes down the toilet. And millions of people die.
Oh, I think you're talking more about billions
Oh yeah, I am talking billions.
because you're talking about the entire farm system collapsing, every supply chain collapsing, everything that runs infrastructure. We're talking about water, sanitation, obviously food growth, shipping, everything croaks.
The electric grid could be hardened against something like that, but nobody wants to spend the money because it's a low order probability. And yet, it's eventually going to happen. Remember, the Carrington event happened only a couple of hundred years ago. It happened before we had a widespread grid, so it didn't really inconvenience anyone. If that were to happen today, it would kill civilization.
It would kill it as we know it, certainly.
Well, it would kill the high tech civilization for certain.
Yeah, for quite a while, it would kill it.
Well, it won't do us much good. Within 6 months, an incredible number of people are going to be dead because of that.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of diseases like cholera just come back with a vengeance because of sanitation difficulties, lack of access to clean drinking water, um, et cetera, ad infinitum. And that's just from that standpoint. We're not even talking about diseases from bugs and everything else that are going to ramp up. Or
Starvation
from
is going to kill people faster than
starvation
any of that.
and starvation. So you mix that all together and you've got a hell of a mess. Suddenly you have a whole bunch of people running around with rabbit fever because that's the only thing they could eat were rabbits, and got a bad batch of them, or some other critter that's got rabies or something else. But people are so desperate they just say fuck it, and
It's time to
yeah,
break out the long pig.
yeah, time to break out the long pig, which may not be very sanitary either.
Pretty sure it's not.
Pretty sure it's not. Have you seen all the preservatives we've been eating over the last 70 years? Would you eat a person? Fuck you. Uh, yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, I can understand the allure of writing that kind of post-apocalypse, fiction.
That's some
Um,
grim shit, man. Nobody
that
wants
is
to
some
have that
very grim
living in their
shit.
head.
Again, that's one of those deals where it's kind of like, okay, but all right, I want to survive, but why? This isn't going to get any better. You're not going to solve any problems. All you're doing is running and running and running and running. And you can fight and win these small battles, but the deal is at the end of the day, you're always going to lose because the world
It's
is not
like The
coming
Walking
back.
Dead. It doesn't matter
Yeah,
what happens, you're going to die.
you're going to die and you're going to become a zombie. Unless somebody blows you up or cuts off your head, you're going to be a zombie. Period. End of story. The moment you stop breathing, you become a zombie. That heartbeat goes beep when that's it. It's over. And that's, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's why I stopped watching the show because it just got
There's no hope.
there's no hope. I know I've said this before and it sounds weird, but here's the horror writer saying you have to have hope. At least I have to have hope to be engaged. And when you figure out there really is no hope, it's kind of like, well, fuck this.
I figured out in season 2, I was like, why am I watching this?
I think I made it to season 4, and then I was just kind of like, okay, well, I like some of these characters and whatnot, but they can't
They're
do
all on
anything.
borrowed time.
They're all on borrowed time, and everybody that comes across are just as nasty as they are, or significantly worse.
What this country needs is a Negan.
Oh my God, no. So eventually it just kind of collapses into itself for me as a reader and viewer. It just at some point I just lose interest and I walk away. But it still is a very interesting thought exercise to go through exactly what society would change into, especially the urban centers, how quickly they would just completely come apart. And then what happens to the rural centers that were always kind of separate anyway, to a certain degree.
They're going to be overrun by survivors.
They're going to be overrun by survivors. This is correct. But they are the ones who are most likely to have solutions for the problems because they have a smaller problem set to deal with.
The only places that are going to survive are the ones that set up an effective barrier and just shoot anyone that tries to get in.
Yeah, doesn't that sound like a lovely place to live? Fuck that. Fuck that.
Sadly, if you don't keep it so that you can have enough supplies to keep the people with you alive, then letting people in is not a kindness.
No, it is not. It is not. It's all about supplies. It's all about, I mean, you're essentially every day people are consuming food. Every day people are consuming energy. Every day people are consuming water. And all of those things are finite resources that may not get replenished. That's an issue. And yeah, you kind of have to start thinking about that. It's just like if I remember correctly about the Inuits, the elderly when they're getting ready to die, they just kind of walk out of camp and go freeze to death
It's possible. I don't know.
because they rather than use up the resources to keep them alive. The tradition was because there's so few resources. When you're at your end, you just basically walk away. You go feed something else, like a polar bear. uh, because there's nothing they can really do for you anyway. You're the walking dead at that point, and all you're doing is using up more and more resources so they try and keep you alive. So in tribal cultures, I'm sure that if the Inuits are the ones I'm thinking of, they're not alone in that. I think there are a lot of tribal cultures that had that. There may have even been some Native American ones. Um, I don't know what the Sioux did. I have no clue. I can't remember. But anyway, my point is that would be essentially what would happen. Okay, you're sick. You need to get the fuck out before you kill all of us, kind of deal. Um, and yeah, that brings up some really hard choices, some really barbaric choices, barbaric by today's standards. You have to always put it in context with what normalcy looks like. before it becomes the new abnormal. But it's a great thought exercise, but I don't think I'm ever really gonna be interested in writing those books.
Having written a single post-apocalyptic novel, I can assure you things go bad fast.
Well, things go bad in Soul and Beyond when we go back in history and we see what caused the big crunch and how long the big crunch lasted and how humanity rebuilt itself. So I kind of have to go back. Eventually I'm going to write one of those stories because I just kind of have to. Um, there's another book that depends on, and I haven't written that book yet. And that book is what kicks off the events that drive humanity into near extinction. And I haven't written that book yet. That's all I'm going to say. Um, but that will lay the groundwork for everything that happened, where G ends up, how humanity ends up in that situation, and how derelict happens, how all of this stuff happens, how the society and why the society is the way it is. And I want to play with that because it's just such a fun problem set to deal with. And the conflicts are crazy because you've got personal conflicts and you've got but then you've got societal conflicts where people have taken a side on different issues, and but while they're rebuilding society at the same time, the things they have to come up with: how do we keep these machines going, how long before nobody knows how the machines work, ugg bang
There's
spanner here.
there has been at least a couple of series that I've read where civilization has fallen, and basically you've got a priesthood that maintains the machines.
Yeah, exactly. And what was that Star Trek episode had Geordi in it? He can make us go. The aliens that were on a ship and had no idea how to fix their ship, no idea how their technology worked. They just had really badass technology and they kidnap him.
I
Um,
vaguely sort of remember it. Yeah.
yeah, he goes over there to fix their ship, and once he fixes it, they kidnap him. Like, yeah, you're staying here, buddy. You can make us go.
You make us go. We leave now.
Yeah, it's pretty much it was an UGG situation. That's how I remember that episode. It's been a long ass time since I've seen it, obviously, probably in college.
There
But
is a book that I read years and years ago by H. Beam Piper called Star Viking.
okay.
Basically, interstellar civilization has collapsed, but there are still places that have enough technology where they can build starships, where they can build things like that. But it's used to raid the bones of the old empire to try
Makes
to get
sense.
resources,
Makes sense.
just like Vikings.
If you think about it, in the wake of an interstellar war, and they touch on this a little bit in Remembrance of Earth's Past, which the three body problem is part of. When you get to the third book, they kind of deal with that a little bit about the fact that there's these interstellar wars that happened or whatever, and there's just shit flying everywhere in these areas where this occurred, and it's a resource mine. Now it means you got to go to some pretty scary places to get the resources you want, and you have no idea how irradiated they are, or if they've got booby traps or anything else. But you're out there basically in an asteroid field of junk, from all these destroyed spacecraft and everything else. Another good place to play, man. Another really good place to play. That's actually a good horror, a space horror, a good space horror setting too. Walking into the
One of the things
aftermath of an alien war.
yeah, one of the things I remember about Star Vikings is the main character is watching as a large crowd overruns a bunch of people that he knows, and he's basically screaming at the television for them to open fire, for them to take their weapons and open fire. And they don't. And the crowd kills them because even though they don't have guns, they've got numbers. And
Right.
he tells the person before, he says, whoever sent them out there murdered them. They should have put a machine gun there and drawn a line across the thing. And the first time someone stepped across it, you started shooting and you didn't stop until they broke and ran. It's a
Yeah.
cold, hard universe. And sometimes you've got to be that guy.
Yeah. That's war right there. That's just trying to stay alive and not. not get crushed. Those lines in the sand are the other thing that's always, that's been with us since the written word, where probably long before that, when folks were drawing, cave paintings and talking in whatever language they were talking in. Where are the lines? The lines are always the lines are always the interesting part because that's where you play between being quote unquote good versus being quote unquote bad. Where are those lines and what are they? And how far does your good character have to cross them in order to do what they're supposed to do? How often do the quote unquote
Sometimes
bad guys
even the
cross the
good
line the other way?
sometimes even the good guys have to do terrible things to show others that there are consequences that they don't want to risk.
Yeah.
And in a world that's like a collapsed civilization, it's sometimes a lot more necessary to do the hard things.
Yeah, and that would be purely about survival. That
You
would
have to
also be
make
kind of
sure that
tribal.
if you've got supplies that other people want, you have to make sure that they know that if they try to take them,
You're gonna hurt them.
bad things will happen to them.
Yeah,
So
if you
that means
spank
you have to make examples of people.
yeah, that's another interesting thing. Just imagine I think Scott Sigler has that in his GFL where somebody mouthed off a little too much, and so they dropped a uh, a relativity bomb on them. I
That'll
think,
pretty much end you.
and he was like, "This is the only time this weapon's ever been used." It was an astoundingly stupid weapon. It pretty much wiped out everything, caused instability in the solar system, and all sorts of other shit. And yeah, so suddenly everybody went, okay, maybe we shouldn't mouth off that much. Maybe we should leave these folks alone and just kind of let them do their thing and not try and control them. Because
One of the
wow, that was
things
bad.
one of the things that I thought was interesting in a series that Glenn Stewart writes is it's a universe where 50,000 years earlier, basically some very technological aliens changed reality just a little bit, trying to improve their own star drives, and things went bad for them and they all died. And
Okay.
the physics of the universe changed slightly. And they have a weapon there that can cause a star to go nova.
Mm.
That weapon was the star drive of that previous civilization. And when somebody tried to use it the first time, it caused the sun to blow up. Bad things happen.
So they didn't bother testing this small scale, is what you're telling me.
There was no small scale to test. It was a small ship. It was just a leftover ship from before everything went bad. They had no idea
Right.
that energizing that drive would have that kind of negative consequence.
Always be careful of technology you don't understand. Always be careful. That's just scary, especially if you walked into the remains of that alien battle. Do you really want to pick that stuff up? It looks really cool, but what's it gonna do? There are no instruction manuals.
Well, the way that he dealt with that in the series is humanity has only recently come to this galactic civilization. The former slaves of the race that wiped themselves out are now one of the most powerful in the galaxy, and they enforce a no technology rule and confiscate any relics found.
Ah,
They don't care what you develop on your own,
you're
but
just not allowed to grab
they
the old stuff.
you're not allowed to have the old technology, and they enforce that with their higher technology.
Gotcha. That would
They're the
kind of be
ones
a
that
good idea.
inadvertently found out that circumstances had changed when it came to the star drive.
Um, I like that. I like that. I like that quite a bit. Of course, you have to have somebody survive to do that from the beginning.
The reason that the race did not survive is they all had cybernetics in their brains, and the change in the constants of the universe basically killed every single last one of them.
Okay, I buy that.
They didn't intend for this change to have that kind of effect, but once again, they didn't understand the full implications of what they were doing.
Hmm.
They were involved in a war that they were losing, and they had to try to change something, and that change ended up being disastrous.
The Reality Dysfunction series, Nightstone trilogy by Hamilton, Peter F. Hamilton, deals with some of that a little bit, where they have the lay mill cults. I think they're called the lay mills. Maybe that's shit. I can't remember what they're called. I think lay mills are actually from God, the Mote in God's Eye. Whatever they were called, they had a something occurred that the humans don't understand, and it wiped them all out. I mean, it wiped them all out. The cool thing is that in Night's Dawn, they have cracked the code of the language of those people, because they managed to find recordings and all sorts of, because basically it's like the aliens just vanished and left all their shit behind. So they are have been exploring these places, artifacts, and recovering these artifacts and memory crystals and all this other garbage, and managed to, you know, decipher some of them. And so they get an idea, some ideas of how the culture works, but there's other parts they just do not understand at all. But then there's the question of the weaponry. There's the question of the technology. Is that what killed them? Is this what killed them? And then they figure out, okay, this killed them, whatever this is, called the reality dysfunction. That's what they called it. What is that? And then they get to experience it. Then humanity gets to experience it. It's
There's a
just
book called Gateway. You familiar with
gateway.
it?
No.
I'm trying to remember who wrote it, but it's one of the classics. And basically, humanity has discovered basically alien space stations that have ships on them that you can tell to go to whatever their destination is. Humanity has no idea where these places are. Some places ships go to and they never return.
Is that
Sometimes you'll
Zelazny's
find
Stargate? Is Stargate the one you're talking about? The original Stargate that was written in the 70s or early 80s?
it was written way back.
I've never read the book, but I think it's a Zelazny book. At least I'm pretty sure it is.
It is a 1977 novel by Frederick Pohl.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. And it's called Gateway?
Yeah.
Okay. For some
And
reason it popped up.
basically, what it involves is thousands of small abandoned starships at a station called Gateway. By dangerous trial and error, humans have partially learned how to operate them and can select some destinations, but nobody knows where those destinations are or what lies on the other end.
Geez, sounds like The Expanse. Um,
Mm.
my Doctor Evil.
I
Um,
remember reading that when I was a kid, going, "Ooh, that's an interesting idea."
yeah, that dealing with alien technology, not really a good idea necessarily.
It's
Mileage
like
may
reading
vary.
Ringworld and going, "Who built this place?"
Yeah, exactly. It's same kind of thing as Ringworld. Why does this exist? What the fuck were these people thinking? They made this bullshit.
Or when you read about Dyson spheres and you go, "Who put this kind of effort into this shit?"
Yeah, and then there's like all these papers on how it's technically feasible, and here's how you would do it, and everything else. And it's like, good Christ, is it really what we're headed for? If you didn't have to defend it, okay, a massive space city, you could build that pretty easily because you have a lot less problems with trying to build that in gravity. But there's the defense problem. If you didn't have to defend it, it wouldn't really be an issue. But like somebody said, if you got this thing floating out there completely untethered, it's vulnerable, very vulnerable. But of course, we were talking about the age of starships. You ever heard of a mass driver? That planet ain't going to save you. Being on the planet ain't going to save you. Not unless you're way the fuck underground. And I'm pretty sure a mass driver would cause all sorts of crazy seismic problems.
A mass driver can create explosions at the nuclear level.
Yeah.
So you probably are not going to get underground enough to help you.
How far are you underground? 200 meters. Is that enough? No.
That may be enough if you're not directly the target.
Yeah, if you're not directly the target, or you build it, you manage to put yourself inside of a mountain, at the very, very base of the mountain, about, oh, I don't know, a couple of kilometers down. Yeah, I could see it, but yeah, it's not what you want to deal with. Not what you want to deal with. At the same time, though, mass driver taking on a space station, that's not going to go well for the space station at all.
Depends on
Can
how
you
much
imagine that?
maneuverability the space station has.
I doubt a space station has all that much maneuverability.
You might be shocked. The International Space Station can raise and lower itself a fair chunk in its orbit, and that's enough for a mass driver to miss.
I'm talking about something a lot larger than the ISS.
Well, that still may be true, but if the ISS can use the primitive thruster technology that we have today to raise and lower itself in its orbit, then given mass drivers and the lengths and distances which they have to fire at, if you know something is coming, you can avoid it.
Unless there are lots of somethings coming.
Now, if you're looking at a shotgun, that's a totally different sort of thing.
Exactly, which is how I would do it. I would
Bring
have,
out the grape and canister.
yeah, that's exactly right. I'd have, 10 or 12 ships out there, all with their mass drivers lobbing. So no matter where the ship goes, if you think about it in 3D space, you've got shit below it, shit on either side of it, and shit above it, all firing at the same time. There's really no place it can go.
I've read a number of books that had situations like that where they're firing small masses and it's a guessing game. Where's the ship going to be?
Right. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
going to
yeah.
maneuver and try to avoid the hit. We've got to bracket it, but got to try to kind of guess where we're sending the swarm of material to hope we get a hit.
Right. Meanwhile, the AI on the other side, or the people on the other side, are saying, okay, well, how are they going to hit us and how do we get out of it? And try and figure out exactly what they're going to do so they can defend against it.
It
That's all
becomes
it can.
very strategic at that point.
I think in The Moat in God's Eye, the original unexpurgated, unedited version from Hell, where there's like 50 pages spent on this one space battle. It's probably the most realistic space battle that I've ever read about, as far as the distances, the time, how long it takes for a missile to travel from A to B, how long it takes for you to know if you scored a hit, even. Um, and it was very, I mean, what was I, 13 when I read that? I was still kind of found it interesting, but I didn't quite understand. Okay, why is this a problem if you're using a laser? Well, it's distance, it's power, it's this, that, and the other. There are certain weapons you can't use until they get in range. You can't fire a missile if it's not going to reach its target because it's going to run out of fuel before it gets there. There's kind of no point in sending it.
You have to have, if you're going to use that kind of missile, it has to have some type of terminal guidance once you get to wherever you're going.
Yeah, yeah, it'd have to be smart and
A lot
have
of
a
the
little bit.
science fiction stories that use missiles deal with it by having an initial boosting package that gets the thing traveling, and then it travels ballistically where it's just on its own. And then at the end, it's got a second maneuvering package that is very limited that can help target whatever
Yeah,
it's trying to hit.
it's like a thruster package. It's just like changing the wings on a missile. You can drive them left or right, just like an airplane. You can drive them up and down just like an airplane. If the object has that capability, and in space you do that with thrusters, and you can basically change its trajectory at any time. You're not going to change its speed doing that, but you can change where it's going to go. So it's just it's such a difference from terrestrial warfare that is completely nonsensical in some ways, because you just don't have those issues.
And human beings, unless they do a lot of reading of science fiction and or scientific papers, would have no idea how crazy some of these things can be. Space warfare is crazy.
If everybody Because everybody is moving, no matter what. Even if they're quote unquote standing still, they're still moving. Because the universe is moving. It's not the same thing as being on a planet. It's just not the same thing at all. And now you're having
It's
to
a
deal with
3D problem of how you get your stuff to where they're going to be, not where they are.
I would say that's a 4D problem because now
You
you're
know,
up to
actually,
deal
you're
with
probably
time.
right. It is a 4D problem.
That's a significantly different, set
Not
of
only do you have to take into account what they're doing, you have to take into account how long it's going to take your weapon to be where it intersects where they're going to be.
right. It's like if, they were talking about, time travel or something like that. If you had to know where the planet was when you left it, because you'd have to basically go back to that trajectory again, or if you're gonna go into the future, you might have to know where the planet's going to be in the future to actually get on it. Everything's moving around. I mean, if you go light
That's why time
speed,
travel doesn't work because all the time travelers end up dead in space.
I think that's right, yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally right. Um, it's just a different set of problems, different problem domain, and a different way of thinking, and it's also gonna really affect how your characters see, all of that and deal with all of it. I like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Well, we've
Man,
been
I don't
at
know
this.
about you, but it's got lightning just going to town
Oh
outside
yeah,
my
I've had the
house.
boom booms, and finally we got rain. Oh my God, finally we got rain. Makes me very happy. My trees will rejoice. Um, Even though they're native, they will rejoice regardless. A sassafras tree was like, I don't need these leaves. It's too goddamn hot. So hopefully now it's got enough water to throw its leaves back. Yeah. Well, we've been at this for an hour and 52 minutes, and you just froze on me again for like the fourth time this
What?
episode. Yeah, constantly
What?
freezing on me. So we should probably get out of here. Well, if you have a comment about any of the crazy we talked about this episode, you can find me, or actually, you can send us an email to show at deathrobotsociety.com. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. You can find Terry at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group, where he manages and wrangles that. And you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast to see our ugly mugs and too damn many cats. We have to thank our wonderful host, Pod Hoster, who makes all 14 bazillion episodes of DRS available for your ear holes. And if you want to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive things like the unedited versions of the show, live shows, which we still have to do. We're actually supposed to do that this weekend. You and I suck at this. So yeah, you can do
It's a good thing I
that.
didn't tell anybody was happening. At least I don't think I did.
Exactly.
Maybe I
Exactly.
did. If
I
so,
hope
then they're
not.
all pretty damn mad because we didn't do it.
I hope you didn't tell anybody because I didn't. Well, I'm pretty sure they would have said something by now. But anyway, yeah, we suck at this. And at the $10 level, you get your name read. And our $10 patrons are Summer Wilson, Tony L. Joy, Andrew Smallwood, Veronica Jaguar, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Chris Winder, and Isabel Cushy. Thank you, patrons. Thank you to all of our patrons for your support in making this show happen.
Thank you so much.
Terry, let's get the hell out of here so I can do more editing and uploading. And I forgot. Damn it. I forgot. It's because I've only had one cup of coffee today. That was during
That
the
sounds like a
pre-show.
personal problem.
It was a personal problem. So that's why I'm all goofy, because I have not had enough Corpse Coffee. Go to visit corpsecoffee.com, get the dead in your cup. Support a small business, view the webcomic, get boutique teas, and tell Dave Robeson we sent you there. Because this is how Terry and I survive, is on Corpse Coffee. So
It's
get the
truth.
dead in your cup. Oh, and by the way, before we go, there's an article, there's a bill up in California for composting the dead.
Well, why not?
Exactly. So I sent the article to Dave Robeson and said, our ultimate plan is coming together.
Yikes.
Yikes. This is corpsecoffee.com, and have a good time. Get a dead in your cup. All right, we are out of here, folks. Have a great week, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye.